This is a recording made by me, Tim Hill, for students of COU202A, Mental Health in the Community, about Assessment 3. I wanted to record some ideas that might help you when you're approaching Assessment 3 in this subject. So the first thing is to read the assessment brief. That's really important. Take the time to really read it thoroughly and slowly so you really understand exactly what's required of you. If there's anything in there that's a little bit unclear, please let me know and I'll try and answer the question for you. You can do that through email or through posting it into the Q&A discussion board. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah. The assessment is worth 40%, so it's worth getting it right. What we're looking for is 2,500 words, plus or minus 10%. On page 2, that's where the assessment brief, that's the question you need to answer. However, it's more valuable, I think, to look at page 3 because that shows you how the marks are allocated. Ideally, you would spend the same amount of time to obtain each mark. So for this assessment, there's 3 main aspects that are worth 10 marks, and then there's another 10 marks available for a grab bag of smaller things. So the first thing is, the first question which is worth 10 marks is to examine current attitudes to mental health in Australia. 700 words. Is about what you should spend on that question. The second one is a discussion of changes that might be valuable to create a more sustainable and equitable mental health system. Again, worth 10 marks. So again, spend about 700 words answering that question. The third one is evaluating the role of counsellors and psychotherapists in making those changes. So again, 10 marks. So again, spend about 700 words on that. And then if you have an introduction of 200 words and a conclusion of about 200 words, that takes you up to the 2,500 words. Okay, so that's how I would allocate my word count according to the questions that you're trying to answer. Some general feedback on the assessment 2 that you guys have done. Generally, no one is using too many references and many are using not nearly enough references. So try to, as a general rule of thumb, whenever you draw on information that isn't your own information, you need to have a reference that supports that, particularly if the information is a statistic or a controversial point of view. It's really important to be able to acknowledge the authors that you've used to inform the work that you're doing. I really recommend that you get into assignments or assessments as soon as you can and to not finish them on the day that they're due. Ideally, finish them a day or two before they're due, let them sit for a day, then come back and reread them. Often by doing that, you can pick up mistakes that you've made, things that you'd like to change, ways to reduce your word count, or to make the way you express yourself even clearer. And the last thing is, again, with assessment 3, like I asked you for assessment 2, please submit it through Safe Assign, which is a way of checking for plagiarism, but also for referencing. I do also want to draw your attention to the Studiosity system, where you can submit your work through Studiosity and it'll be assessed by a subject matter expert before you submit it to me for marking. This is a great way to gain extra marks. If it's a system you're not currently using, I really recommend that you do that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about assessment 3. I'm going to throw it open to the other student on the line and to see if he has any questions that he feels like he would like to answer, or to ask rather, and perhaps if he wanted to suggest some questions that he feels other students might ask as well. So over to you, Jeff.
Not really much, but if you're submitting a safer sign, right, don't
Yes.
submit your reference list because it will
Ye
come up as plagiarized.
Yes, that's a good point, actually, Jeff. Yeah. So ideally, don't submit it your references through Safer Sign. You can, but it just means that it makes your originality score higher. Nonetheless, whether you do or whether you don't, I'm still going to be looking through it just to make sure that everything's all okay. So thank you, Jeff. Jeff, did you have another question there?
No, so there's what a minimum of 10 references, isn't it? With cyber, generally speaking.
Yeah, I'd say 10 was a minimum, but by all means, feel free to use more than 10 if you want as well.
Yeah,
Generally, I'm sorry?
One reference per 80 words, generally, isn't it?
Look, I don't know if, I've never heard that particular metric before, but generally, it does depend on the topic, but generally you need to be across the major pieces of work that relate to the assessment. So yes, 10's a good rule of thumb, but by all means, if you feel that you can't get the information you need out of 10 references, by all means use more, 12 or 14 or even more. Sorry, Jeff, didn't quite catch that.
I said, just double check to make sure you put your reference list with the diamond.
Yep, do that. Make sure you submit your references with your assessment. Yeah.
I think it was. Oh, okay. It's sort of pretty straightforward now that you sort of broke it down into your topics. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, if you, Jeff, or anybody else who happens to be looking at this recording has any questions about that, please just drop me a line through email or on the assessment Q&A topic on the discussion board. But if that's it, what I might do is bring this to a close and wish you all the best with assessment 3. Okay, well, one last thing. If you have a reason that falls within the scope of the application for assessment special consideration for, asking for an extension on your date, just make sure you submit that to me 24 hours before the assessment is due. Okay, no worries. Take care, best of luck, and I'll talk to you later on.
Okay, right, thank you very much. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.